there are so many stories about it that that I thought, well, we need to get a little deeper into this and try to find out maybe not just the stories but the truths.
It's turned into an oddity that people enjoy, and people want to save it just for the historical value of downtown.
We have this rich history that's funny at times, it's sad at times, and it's a history that we're proud of.
My name is Jan Seville.
My name is Marvin Groves. I'm with Marvin Groves Electric.
Okay, my name is Becky Trammell. My only title is I'm the marker chair for the Wichita County Historical Commission.
My name is Dick Bundy. I'm the CEO and senior principal of BYSP Architects.
Dolores Cully, and I'm the executive director for the Wichita County Heritage Society.
Well, along about 1912, Burke Burnett, which is just north of here, about 10-12 miles, was just a farmer's field. But suddenly oil is gushing out of the ground and millionaires are being made overnight.
You think about Wichita County around from the years of 1912 to 1919, this was oil boom. Thousands and thousands of people came to this area because of the oil boom.
Wichita Falls was one of the richest cities in the nation in the early 1900s.
So floods of people start showing up. Now there's nowhere up in Burke for them to be. They're up there in tents if they're lucky enough to have them. And so they tend to come here to Wichita Falls.
Wichita Falls was booming with all the activity going on.
All of these people coming in, Wichita Falls, Burke Burnett, all of the surrounding area did not have the infrastructure to support these people. There weren't homes, there weren't houses, there wasn't office spaces.
Back when the Burke Burnett oil fields came in, which was a huge oil boom around here, somewhere around 1916, people were affluent. They'd end up with so much money and so much cash that there was this frenzy of office space need in town.
My favorite story, which I believe is true, is stock deals happening on the street corners because nobody had an office. August Newby, who was involved with the railroad, was also a president of one of the banks at one time, had a building built. Just 2 rooms, 2 big office buildings there on the corner of what is now 7th and LaSalle.
But the street that runs alongside this building, most people refer to it as an alley now, but it is the only named alley in this town. It is called LaSalle Street, and the reason it has a name is because it was once, back then, the main drag. So we were very much in the thick of things, and this sort of was the hub of downtown at that time.
A guy by the name of J.D. McMahon had moved here as a head of a firm. His office and others were in the Newby building, which is the 1-story building in front of the skyscraper.
A scammer, a con man, an engineer, an oil field worker from Philadelphia came and rented office space from Newby, in the Newby building.
So Mr. McMahon talks to some investors. He describes the situation. He says, you know what? We got businessmen sitting on apple crates on street corners around here. I'll have my men build us a high-rise building. We'll have it leased out before you know it, and we'll all be getting rich.
He had decided that he was going to build an extension on the Newby building, and it was going to be this, I believe, that it was going to be a fabulous extension, a skyscraper.
They believed that they were going to get a building that was going to be 40 stories tall, 480 feet. That would have been the tallest building in the state of Texas at that time, rivaling even some of the tallest buildings in the world. He raised $200,000 from them. Might not seem like a tremendous amount today, but it is about $3 million in today's dollars.
I can picture how if I'd been in that business at the time and cash was rolling in and somebody comes around and says, how would you like to invest in this deal? Probably with that kind of money, you wouldn't look at it real hard, because these are oil people that are wildcatting, they're throwing money everywhere.
However, people became skeptical when the actual building was being built because it had a very small footprint.
But Mr. McMahon's plans that he had provided to them were not in feet at all. They were in inches. And that is the scale that the building was built at. We are 480 inches tall.
Instead of all of the dimensions being in feet, they were in inches. So in other words, his 4,800 feet skyscraper is actually 40 feet.
He came back and he built the building, but he built it in inches instead of feet.
The legend fits the space, because you can take the size of the space and say it in inches, and it looks pretty impressive, but it's only 40 feet tall. So I think the legend makes sense.
1/12 scale, then, is also what they make doll houses at. So if you are a doll, you will find that the littlest skyscraper is indeed gigantic.
So instead of having this multi-story fabulous building that would have dwarfed everything else in Wichita Falls, we have the building that we have.
As soon as they started questioning it, well, he was gone. And so it was a huge letdown to think that they'd been scammed out of $200,000.
It was a debacle. People had been lied to and ripped off, and they were angry. In fact, they wanted the building to be demolished immediately because they did not want to be implicated as being the fools that had been, taken advantage of.
Oh my gosh, we've been rooked. This was a disgrace. This was it was an eyesore. Even after the boom times, after it was an abandoned building, like I said, there were plans to take it down.
However, it was used, but then once the Depression came along, many people who made their fortune in oil lost it. And so the building went out of service, and then it was burned in the early 30s, got boarded up, and stood dormant and vacant for decades. 7 decades, in fact. But it was still, for many years, for at least one lifetime, perhaps. You don't want to be associated with being the one that got duped.
You have to realize at that time, in that time period, they didn't tear down buildings. It was too hard to get them built to tear them down. Even if it wasn't what you thought it was going to be and what you wanted it to be, you wouldn't have gone in and just torn it down. That just didn't happen. It took too much money and too much manpower and everything else to build a building. So they would have never torn it down. And that was just the mindset of that period. You didn't tear things down, you built things up.
And they deeded it to the Wichita County Heritage Society. And then ultimately we went to them and said, hey, we'd like to carry it to the next stage. When we bought it, there were no floors in the building because they'd all burned out. And although it had a roof when we bought it, we went back in and built all the floors back, the stairs, redid all the windows and all of that, and restored it to a point where it is today, where it's stable and is a great legend for our community.
Since then, in 2005, that's when it was restored. It has, this shop front here has been a number of things, but oftentimes the skyscraper was still not available to the public because they would use it as storage or whatever, rather than allowing the public to move in or to explore it. When we bought this store about 6 years ago, I walked in here. The store was pre-existing. I walked in here to buy 3 cans of paint, and I walked out with the whole store. We are now about to enter the world's littlest skyscraper.
Well, I think the moral of the story is the history of our community needs to be preserved. To me, and that legend, the story behind the legend of the little skyscraper, is a very interesting legend that I think is interesting to continue. But the moral or the most important part to me is that we've preserved that part of the history of our community, and it's important to have that.
I think that building probably represents better than almost any other building in this town, the longevity of Wichita Falls and the not giving up part of Wichita Falls.
All of our history isn't just fabulous oil boom, fabulous farming, fabulous ranching. We've got some interesting, I guess is a good descriptor, parts of our history, and the littlest skyscraper fits into that. It's an interesting part of our history. It makes us a little different. I don't know anybody else that has a building like that around.
Wichita Falls, like any other city, has gone through lots of booms and busts, a lot. But the people never seem to give up.
That shows some stability and shows some perseverance, which I think really exemplifies a lot of the pioneers of Wichita County.
And this is one of those things that, while it might not have turned out well for the particular investors, it has now, 100 years later, turned out to be a good thing for our city.
Like I said, it is a symbol of perseverance. We have some quirks, but gosh, we're still here. We're still moving forward. Historical markers are a snapshot. Here's a little bit. And I think the littlest skyscraper fits into that snapshot. Well, here's something that you see and it looks quirky. It looks strange. It doesn't fit in. If that generates interest in you to dig a little deeper, to stay a little longer, to come to the Wichita County Archives and ask somebody, well, what is this building? Then it's worth it.